The fluorescent lights above Trauma Bay 3 had been flickering for 6 hours straight. I'd stopped noticing after the first two. When you work a 12-hour shift in the ER at Chicago Mercy, you learn to tune out everything except breath sounds and bleeding. The buzz becomes white noise. The chaos becomes normal. What wasn't normal was the man on the gurney. He had the kind of face you remembered. Sharp enough to cut glass, all brutal angles and aristocratic bones that didn't match the blood soaking through his shirt. Dark hair, going silver at the temples. Eyes closed now, but I'd seen them when the paramedics wheeled him in, pale blue, cold as winter morning, scanning the room with predator awareness even while bleeding out from a gut wound. "GSW to the abdomen," the paramedic had barked. "Entry wound left side, no exit. BP dropping. Pulse thready." I'd taken point immediately, my hands moving through the practiced choreography of trauma care. Cut away the expensive shirt, silk, Italian, soaked crimson. Apply pressure, start fluids, get imaging ordered. Dr. Patel had been called down from surgery, but until he arrived, this man's life was in my hands. The patient hadn't made a sound. No groans, no screams, nothing. Just that cold blue stare tracking my movements with unsettling intensity until the pain or blood loss finally dragged him under. "Maire," the attending physician glanced at me. "You good here while I handle Bay 2? "I've got him." I pressed harder on the wound, feeling warm blood pulse against my gloved hands. The rhythm was weakening. Around me, the ER thrummed with its usual Friday night symphony. Drunk college students in Bay 1. Possible appendicitis in Bay 4. Someone screaming about spiders that weren't there. I'd been a nurse for 4 years, working this particular hell for 2, and I'd learned to compartmentalize. This patient was a puzzle to solve. Keep him breathing until surgery could fix what bullets had broken. I didn't let myself think about the expensive suit now ruined on my floor, the way his hands were calloused despite the manicured nails, the tattoo I'd glimpsed on his ribs when cutting away his shirt. Celtic knotwork, intricate and telling. I definitely didn't let myself think about the 3 men who'd arrived 10 minutes after the ambulance, all wearing dark suits and harder expressions, now pacing the waiting room like caged wolves. "BP's dropping," I called out. "I need that surgeon now." The patient's eyes opened, just for a second, locking onto mine with startling clarity. His lips moved. I leaned closer. "Don't try to talk. Save your strength. Declan." The word came out blood thick. "My son. Tell him. You can tell him yourself when you're out of surgery." I kept pressure on the wound, watching his pupils. Still reactive. Still fighting. "Stay with me. Tell him Brennan. Vincent Brennan." His hand shot up, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. Shot me. My own partner. Then his eyes rolled back, and the monitors screamed. I slammed my palm on the code button. "I need a crash cart in 3, now." The next 6 minutes were controlled chaos. Chest compressions. Intubation. Dr. Patel finally arriving and barking orders while I reported vitals and interventions. We got a pulse back twice, lost it twice, and by the 3rd time his heart stopped. Even I knew we were losing. Time of death, 22:47. Dr. Patel stripped off his gloves, frustration etched into every line of his face. Damn it, too much blood loss. I stood there still holding pressure on a wound that no longer mattered, and felt the familiar hollow ache of losing a patient. It never got easier. The bodies cooled. The monitors flatlined. And you moved on to the next gurney, the next crisis. Because that was the job. "Maire, you need to inform the family." I looked up. "What?" "His people. They're in the waiting room." Dr. Patel was already moving toward Bay 2. "Irish mob, if the look of them is anything to go by. Be careful what you say." Irish mob. The tattoo made sense now. The expensive suit. The men in the waiting room with their hard eyes and harder reputations. And the last words of a dying man accusing his partner of murder. I stripped off my gloves, washed my hands in the sink until the water ran clear, and tried to figure out exactly how to deliver this news without getting myself killed. The waiting room smelled like burned coffee and fear. The three men stood the moment I entered, moving with military precision. The one in front was younger than the others, maybe early 30s, tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair and those same pale blue eyes I'd just watched go dim and fixed. Declan. Had to be. "I'm so sorry," I started, and watched his expression shudder completely. "No." The word was flat. Not a question. A refusal. "We did everything we could. The damage was too extensive. He lost too much blood before." "Where is he?" The younger man, Declan, cut me off. His accent was pure Southside Irish, roughened by something that sounded like grief turned to gravel. "I can take you to him, but I need to prepare you. I've seen dead bodies before, nurse." He moved past me, leaving me to trail behind as he navigated the ER hallways like he knew exactly where he was going. I caught up outside Bay 3. "Wait. Before you go in, there's something you should know." He turned. The full weight of his attention was like standing too close to a fire. Heat and danger in equal measure. This close, I could see the resemblance to his father was uncanny. Same brutal beauty. Same cold intelligence in those pale eyes. He spoke to me, at the end. I kept my voice low, aware of the nurses stationed 20 feet away. "He said to tell you it was Vincent Brennan who shot him." Every muscle in Declan's body went rigid. "What?" "Vincent Brennan. He said his partner shot him. That's all he said before." I trailed off. For a long moment, Declan just stared at me. I couldn't read his expression. Grief, fury, calculation, all warring beneath a surface of iron control. "You're certain?" he said finally. "I'm certain that's what he said." I met his gaze steadily. "Whether it's true, I can't tell you. But those were his last words." Something shifted in his face. Some decision made behind those winter blue eyes. "What's your name?" "Maire. Maire Doyle. Irish." He said it like an observation and an accusation simultaneously. "Third generation. My great-grandfather came over in the 20s. "From where?" "County Cork originally. Why does it—" "Because you just painted a target on both our backs." Declan stepped closer, and I had to fight the urge to retreat. "Vincent Brennan is one of the most powerful men in Chicago. My father's partner for 20 years. And you're telling me, a complete stranger, that he just ordered a hit on one half of the Irish mob's leadership." My mouth went dry. "I'm just telling you what your father said." "And now what? You think you walk back to your shift? Finish your paperwork? Go home to your apartment in, let me guess, Lincoln Park? Wicker Park?" His smile was knife-sharp. "And tomorrow, Vincent doesn't hear that some nurse was spreading accusations about him in the ER where Finn O'Sullivan died?" The fear that had been abstract suddenly became very concrete. "I was doing my job. Telling you what your father wanted you to know?" "I know." His expression softened fractionally. "Which is why you're coming with me." "I can't just leave my shift." "You don't have a choice anymore, Maire Doyle." He glanced at the two men who'd been standing silent sentinel throughout this exchange. "Sean, clear her out. Make it look like she left voluntarily. Connor, call ahead. I want the penthouse secured and everyone we trust waiting." "Wait." I grabbed his arm before I'd thought it through. "You can't just kidnap me." "I'm not kidnapping you. I'm protecting you." He covered my hand with his, and even through the fury and grief radiating off him, his touch was careful. "You delivered a message from my dying father. That makes you a witness. a liability. And the only way I can guarantee Vincent doesn't kill you to cover his tracks is if you're under my protection. Understand? I understood. And I also understood that my quiet life of 12-hour shifts and student loans and absolutely no involvement in organized crime had just imploded spectacularly. I need to tell someone where I'm going. No, you don't. Declan's grip tightened. From this moment on, Maire, you don't exist to your old life. You call in sick. You disappear. And you stay disappeared until I've dealt with Vincent Brennan. How long? However long it takes. He released my hand and pushed through the door to Bay 3, leaving me standing in the hallway with two very large Irish mobsters and the sinking realization that I'd just traded saving one life for destroying my own. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in River North that probably cost more than my entire bloodline had earned in 4 generations. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago River, the city lights reflecting off dark water like scattered diamonds. I stood in the living room, if you could call something the size of my entire apartment a room, and tried to process the last 2 hours. Declan had walked out of that trauma bay with his father's body barely cold and immediately started orchestrating my extraction like a military operation. Sean, the bigger of the 2 bodyguards, had escorted me to the locker room where I'd changed out of scrubs under his extremely uncomfortable supervision outside the door. Connor had handled my supervisor, spinning some story about a family emergency that had me pulling a double shift's worth of sick days. And now, I was here. In a mobster's penthouse. A hostage? A witness? I genuinely wasn't sure which. Declan stood at the windows. Back to me, phone pressed to his ear. He'd stripped off his jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and more of that Celtic knotwork tattooed along his left arm. He spoke in rapid Irish, actual Gaelic, I realized with a start. His tone clipped and authoritative. When he finally hung up, he didn't turn around. There's a bedroom on the 2nd level, bathroom attached. Sean will get you whatever you need. Clothes, toiletries, whatever. His reflection in the glass looked carved from stone. You don't leave this building without my explicit permission. You don't contact anyone from your previous life. You don't exist outside these walls until I say otherwise. This is insane. I heard my voice shake and hated it. You can't just imprison me because I delivered a message. I can. I am. Now he turned, and the grief I'd seen hints of earlier had been buried beneath layers of cold fury. My father is dead, murdered by someone he trusted for 2 decades, and you're the only person who knows the truth. So use me as a witness. Go to the police. His laugh was ugly. The police? Maire, Vincent Brennan owns half the CPD. The other half he's got compromise on. Going to the cops would be signing both our death warrants. Then what's your plan? Gather evidence, identify Vincent's allies, isolate him, and then... He left the sentence unfinished, but his expression made the ending perfectly clear. Murder. He was going to murder Vincent Brennan. I should have been horrified. Should have demanded to leave, threatened to scream, something. Instead, I heard myself asking, why would his partner kill him? Declan moved to a bar cart, poured 2 fingers of whiskey into crystal tumblers. He brought one to me, pressed it into my hand. Drink. You look like you're about to pass out. I drank. The whiskey burned down my throat, settled hot in my empty stomach. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten. My father and Vincent built their empire together, Declan said, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than my car. 40 years of partnership, running everything from the docks to construction to... He stopped. Suffice it to say, they controlled a lot. Split everything 50-50. Brothers, or so I thought. What changed? I did. He stared into his glass. My father wanted to go legitimate, or as legitimate as men like us can get. Clean money, legal businesses. He was tired of looking over his shoulder, wanted to retire. Hand everything to me without the constant threat of federal indictment or rival families. His jaw clenched. Vincent disagreed. Violently. So he killed him? So he killed him. Declan drained his whiskey in one swallow. And now he'll try to convince the other families that I'm weak, that I can't hold my father's territory, that they should side with him in the inevitable war. He set down the glass with controlled precision. Unless I move first, strike before he can consolidate power. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. This is... I couldn't even finish the sentence. Your life now. Declan's voice softened fractionally. I'm sorry, Maire, genuinely. You did a kindness delivering my father's message, and this is how you're repaid. But I can't change it. Can't risk Vincent getting to you. How long? I asked again. Weeks. Maybe a month. A month. 4 weeks of my life suspended. My job would fire me. My rent would go unpaid. My student loans would default. Everything I'd worked for since graduating nursing school. Gone. I'll compensate you. Declan seemed to read my thoughts. Whatever you lose, income, job prospects, housing, I'll make it right. You have my word. The word of a mobster. The word of an O'Sullivan. He stood, moved to the windows again. We keep our promises, Maire, even the inconvenient ones. I believed him, which was maybe the most insane part of this entire nightmare. Sean appeared in the doorway. Boss, Michael's here, wants to pay respects. Declan nodded. Send him to the study. Maire. He looked at me. Stay in your room. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Who's Michael? My uncle. My father's brother. Something complicated crossed his face. And someone I'm not entirely sure I can trust right now. Fear spiked cold through my veins. You think he might be involved? I think everyone's involved until proven otherwise. Declan crossed to me, offered his hand to pull me up from the couch. Which is why you stay hidden. Understand? I let him pull me to standing, acutely aware of how close we were suddenly. He smelled like whiskey and expensive cologne, and beneath it something darker. Grief, maybe, or fury, barely contained. I understand. Good. He didn't release my hand immediately. And Maire, thank you for telling me, for being brave enough to deliver that message even knowing what it might cost you. Our eyes met, held, and for just a moment, beneath the fear and insanity, I felt something else entirely. Some recognition, some pull I had absolutely no business feeling toward my captor. Then he let go, and Sean was escorting me up a floating staircase to the second level, to a bedroom done in shades of cream and silver that looked like a hotel room designed by someone who'd never experienced actual comfort. I sat on the bed and waited for my new life to start making sense. It didn't. I woke to shouting. Male voices, raised in anger, filtering up from somewhere below. I'd fallen asleep still dressed, lying on top of the covers, too wired to undress or properly settle. Now I sat up, disoriented, my nurse's brain automatically cataloging details. Time: 3:47 a.m. according to the bedside clock. Location: Mobster's penthouse. Status: thoroughly screwed. The shouting continued. 2 voices, Declan's clipped authority and someone older, rougher. I shouldn't go investigate. Should stay exactly where Declan had told me to stay, invisible and safe. Instead, I eased open the bedroom door. The second level overlooked the main living area, a balcony with glass railings that gave a clear view of the space below. I crept to the edge, staying in shadows, and looked down. Declan stood toe-to-toe with an older man who shared his build and coloring. Michael, presumably. The uncle. Behind them, Sean and Connor flanked the exits, hands resting on weapons I tried not to look at too closely. "Can't just accuse Vincent without proof," Michael was saying. "Finn was shot in a robbery. Wrong place, wrong time. It happens." "It was an execution." Declan's voice was ice. "Clean shot to the gut, close range, professional. And the timing is too convenient." "Convenient how?" "He was meeting with the Italians, brokering a truce that would have stabilized the South Side. Vincent didn't want stability. He wanted expansion. Conflict. War drives profit in our business, and my father was threatening that." Michael dragged a hand through his silver hair. "You're talking about 40 years of partnership. Brothers in blood, if not name. You think Vincent would throw that away?" "I think power makes men do terrible things." Declan moved to the bar, poured whiskey he didn't drink. And I know what my father's last words were. "According to some random nurse who has no reason to lie." Declan spun. "No skin in this game, no knowledge of our world. And she delivered a dying man's message because it was the right thing to do. Or because Vincent paid her to plant evidence." The accusation made my blood run cold. "No." Declan's response was immediate, certain. I looked into her. Maire Doyle. Third-generation Irish-American. Clean record. Works double shifts to pay off her mother's medical debt. She's exactly what she appears to be. Collateral damage in a war she didn't ask for. "Then where is she?" Michael challenged. "This paragon of innocence?" "Safe. Hidden. And staying that way until Vincent's dealt with." "You're protecting her." Something in Michael's tone made Declan go very still. "I'm protecting a witness." "Is that what we're calling it?" The silence that followed felt dangerous. "Careful, Uncle," Declan said softly. "You're implying something you can't take back." "I'm implying you're thinking with something other than your head." Michael's voice gentled. "Declan, I know you're grieving. I know you want someone to blame. But starting a war with Vincent Brennan over the word of one terrified nurse." "She wasn't terrified. She was professional. Composed." Declan set down the untouched whiskey. "And she looked me in the eye when delivering the worst news of my life without flinching. That takes courage. Or practice." I'd heard enough. More than enough. I retreated to the bedroom, eased the door shut, and stood there shaking. They thought I was lying. Or worse, working for Vincent. That my presence here was some elaborate setup to make Declan look paranoid, destabilize his leadership, create openings for Vincent to exploit. I wasn't. I'd done exactly what any nurse would do, delivered a patient's last words to his family. But how did I prove that? How did I convince an Irish mobster and his uncle that I was just an innocent caught in the crossfire? The answer was simple. I couldn't. A soft knock made me jump. I opened the door to find Declan standing there alone. He looked exhausted. Grief and fury and sleeplessness etched into the lines of his face. "You heard." Not a question. I nodded. "Michael's gone. He'll come around eventually. But right now?" Declan trailed off, then seemed to make a decision. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay." "Did anyone approach you before my father died? Offer you money? Make threats? Anything that would have motivated you to deliver a specific message?" "No." I met his eyes. "Declan. And I'd never seen your father before he was wheeled into my ER. Never heard of Vincent Brennan. I delivered his last words because that's what you do for dying patients. You honor their final requests." He studied me for a long moment. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. I believe you. Your uncle doesn't. My uncle is paranoid. Comes with 40 years in this business. Declan leaned against the doorframe. But he's not entirely wrong to question. Too many convenient coincidences make patterns. And patterns make graves. So what happens now? Now I prove Vincent killed my father. Gather evidence, build a case solid enough that even the skeptics in the family can't deny it. His smile was grim. And then I make him pay. By killing him. By making sure he never hurts anyone I care about again. Declan's gaze locked onto mine, which now includes you, whether you like it or not. The casual way he said it, anyone I care about, made something in my chest constrict. You don't even know me. I know enough, and I protect what's mine. He pushed off the doorframe. Get some sleep, Maire. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to end this without getting us both killed. He left, and I stood alone in a borrowed bedroom wearing yesterday's clothes, trying to understand how my life had veered so spectacularly off course. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, I dreamed of fluorescent lights and blood on my hands and pale blue eyes going dim and fixed. Morning arrived with coffee I didn't make and clothes I didn't own. Sean knocked precisely at 8, handed me a tray with breakfast and a stack of shopping bags. Boss had these sent up, said to take your time. I looked through the bags after he left. Designer jeans in my exact size, soft sweaters, undergarments that cost more than my usual weekly grocery budget. Everything perfectly chosen for someone who understood both quality and practicality. Declan had done this. Somehow learned my sizes, my preferences, and outfitted me like I belonged in his world. I should have been creeped out. Instead, I felt cared for in a way that was deeply confusing. I showered, dressed in jeans that fit like they'd been tailored for my body, and a cashmere sweater in deep green. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, I found Declan in the kitchen, an industrial space of marble and steel that looked like it had never seen actual cooking. He glanced up from his laptop. Better? The clothes are perfect, thank you. Sean's sister works in personal shopping at Neiman Marcus. I gave her your measurements and general description, told her to pull together a month's worth of basics. He closed the laptop. If anything doesn't fit or you need something else, just tell Sean. How did you know my sizes? I'm observant. The corner of his mouth quirked. Comes with the job. I poured coffee from the French press on the counter, added cream, and tried not to think about how domestic this felt. What happens today? Today you meet Siobhan. Who? My cousin. She's a lawyer. Handles the legitimate side of family business. Also happens to be one of the few people I trust absolutely. He checked his watch. She'll be here in 20 minutes. I want her to prep you. For what? For the possibility that Vincent tries to discredit you. Plant evidence you're unstable, bought off, anything that undermines your credibility. Declan's expression hardened. He's smart, ruthless, and he knows that message from my father is the biggest threat to his plans. So he'll come after me. He'll try. Which is why you stay here, under guard, until this is over. He moved around the counter, stood close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. I won't let anything happen to you, Maire, that's a promise. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why do you care so much about protecting some random nurse? Something shifted in his expression. Because you were the last person my father spoke to. Because you honored his dying wish when you could have stayed silent. Because... He stopped, jaw tightening. Because I do. That's reason enough. It wasn't. Not really. But before I could push further, the elevator chimed and a woman emerged. She was striking. Tall, red hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a charcoal suit that screamed power attorney. Her eyes, green and sharp, scanned me with immediate assessment. "So you're the nurse causing all this drama?" Not hostile, just blunt. "Siobhan, be nice." Declan moved between us. "Maire, this is my cousin. She's going to help keep you alive." "Charmed," Siobhan said dryly. "Shall we?" The next 3 hours were a masterclass in mob legal strategy. Siobhan had me recount everything, from the moment Finn O'Sullivan arrived in the ER to Declan's extraction of me to this penthouse. She took notes on a legal pad, asked clarifying questions, and occasionally swore under her breath in what I thought might be Irish. "Okay," she said finally. "Here's what we're dealing with. Vincent will absolutely try to discredit you. Easiest route is painting you as a liar seeking attention or money. He'll dig into your background, find pressure points. I have nothing to hide. Everyone has something." Siobhan's smile was sympathetic. "Medical debt, for instance. Significant debt makes you vulnerable to bribery accusations." My stomach sank. "My mother's cancer treatment. I'm paying it off, but it's 47,000. "I know. I pulled your financials this morning." She held up a hand before I could protest. "Not to invade your privacy, to identify what Vincent will use against you." "Can he actually access that information?" "Vincent Brennan has cops, judges, and bankers on his payroll. He can access anything." Siobhan glanced at Declan, who'd been standing silently by the windows throughout this interrogation. "Which is why we're going to pay it off. Today. All of it." "What?" "No, I can't." "You can. And you will," Declan said quietly. "Because the moment the debt disappears, so does Vincent's easiest avenue of attack. I'm not taking money from you." "You're not taking. You're accepting payment for services rendered." He turned to face me fully. "You delivered my father's last words. You've been uprooted from your life, put in danger, isolated from everything you know. Consider this compensation." $47,000 isn't compensation, it's a fraction of what my family is worth. His expression was unreadable. "And cheaper than hiring round-the-clock protection if Vincent decides violence is more expedient than character assassination." Put that way, I couldn't argue. Which didn't mean I had to like it. "Fine," I said tightly, "but I want it documented. As payment for witness protection or consultation or whatever legal framework makes this legitimate." Siobhan's smile widened. "I like her, December. She's got spine." I noticed. Something passed between them. Some unspoken communication that made Siobhan's expression turn knowing. "I'll draw up the paperwork," she said, gathering her notes. "And Maire, for what it's worth, I believe you. Declan's instincts about people are rarely wrong. If he says you're trustworthy, you are." After she left, I found myself alone with Declan again. The penthouse felt enormous and claustrophobic simultaneously. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Pay off the debt." I did, actually. He poured fresh coffee, handed me a cup without asking if I wanted it. "Because every connection to your old life is a vulnerability. A thread Vincent can pull. We're cutting those threads one by one until you're safe. And when this is over? When Vincent's dealt with and I'm no longer useful? What then?" Declan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "Then you get your life back. New identity if you want it. Relocation if necessary. Whatever you need to feel safe." It was the right answer. The smart answer. So why did it feel like a door closing? 3 days passed in strange suspension. I existed in Declan's penthouse like a ghost. Present but not quite real. Sean and Connor rotated shifts guarding the elevator. Siobhan visited daily with legal updates. And Declan was everywhere and nowhere. He worked impossible hours, disappearing into his study for phone calls in Irish and English and what might have been Polish. He'd emerge looking drawn, pour whiskey he rarely finished, and stand at those massive windows staring at the city like he could bend it to his will through sheer force of focus. We didn't talk much beyond necessary exchanges, but I felt him watching me, caught him sometimes, those pale blue eyes tracking my movements with an intensity that made my skin prickle. On the fourth night, I couldn't sleep. Too much nervous energy, too many hours of confinement. I wandered down to the living room around 2 a.m. and found Declan already there, sitting in darkness except for the city lights filtering through the windows. "Can't sleep either?" he asked without turning. "Too quiet?" I settled onto the couch, leaving space between us. The ER is never quiet. Always machines beeping, people talking. Something. This is unsettling. Yes. He finally looked at me. "Tell me about nursing. Why you chose it?" The question surprised me. My mother. When she got sick, the nurses were... I searched for words. They were the only ones who treated her like a person instead of a diagnosis. Who held her hand when the chemo made her vomit. Who stayed late to braid her hair when she was too weak to do it herself. I traced patterns on the leather armrest. I wanted to be that for someone else. To be the person who shows up when everything's falling apart. And you are. You were. For my father. For all the good it did. You gave him peace. Declan's voice was rough. Those last moments. He wasn't alone. He got to send a final message to his son. That matters, Maire. More than you know. We sat in silence, the weight of grief and responsibility settling over us like snow. "Tell me about him," I said finally. "Your father." Declan smiled, and it transformed his face, softened the harsh angles into something almost tender. He was larger than life. Literally, 6'4", built like he'd been carved from oak. Voice that could fill a room, or gentle enough to sing lullabies. His smile faded. He taught me everything: how to fight, how to negotiate, how to know when to bend and when to break. "Sounds like you loved him. More than anything." The confession was raw. He wasn't perfect, did terrible things in the name of protecting what was his. But he was trying to change, trying to build something better for me, for the next generation. His hands clenched, and Vincent took that away. "We'll prove it." I don't know why I said we. This wasn't my fight. But sitting there in the darkness with this grieving man, I wanted it to be. Declan's gaze locked onto mine. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Staying calm, being helpful. Most people in your position would be falling apart." I considered lying, keeping up the professional facade. Instead, I told the truth. Because falling apart doesn't help anyone. My mother taught me that. When everything's chaos, you find the one thing you can control and you focus on that. I met his eyes. Right now, the thing I can control is being useful. Being here. Helping you finish what your father started. Helping me commit murder, you mean. Helping you get justice. They're the same thing in my world. Maybe. I didn't look away. But you're doing it for the right reasons. And that has to count for something. The silence stretched, charged with something I didn't want to name. Then Declan moved, crossed the space between us in 2 strides and cupped my face in his hands. "Tell me to stop." I should have. Every logical brain cell I possessed screamed that this was a terrible idea. He was a mobster. My captor, technically. A man capable of violence I'd only glimpsed shadows of. But those hands holding my face were impossibly gentle. And those eyes, pale blue like winter ice, looked at me like I was something precious and breakable. "Don't stop," I whispered. He kissed me like I was air and he was drowning. desperate but controlled, taking what he needed while somehow giving more. His hand stayed on my face, thumbs stroking my cheekbones, while I gripped his shoulders and tried to remember why this was wrong. I couldn't. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Declan pressed his forehead to mine. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "The worst," I agreed. "You're under my protection. I shouldn't. But you want to." "God, yes." His grip tightened fractionally. "From the moment you stood in that waiting room and delivered my father's message without flinching, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. That was 4 days ago. Longest 4 days of my life." I laughed, breathless and slightly hysterical. "We barely know each other. I know you're brave. I know you care about people. I know you've been dealt a terrible hand and you keep showing up anyway." He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. "I know I have no right to want you, but I do. Desperately." The confession hung between us, raw and dangerous. "Declan, say no, please. Give me a reason to do the right thing here." I should have. Should have established boundaries, maintained professional distance, protected us both from the inevitable crash. Instead, I kissed him again. This time, there was nothing controlled about it. His hands moved from my face to my waist, pulling me against him. Mine tangled in his hair, I discovering it was softer than it looked. We kissed like people who'd been starving and finally found sustenance, messy and desperate and perfect. When we broke apart again, I was in his lap, my sweater rucked up, his shirt partially unbuttoned, and neither of us seemed capable of coherent thought. "Bedroom," Declan managed, "unless you want Sean to get an education when he checks the perimeter." I laughed and let him carry me upstairs, to his bedroom this time, where the windows overlooked the river and the bed was big enough for terrible decisions. We made several. And somewhere around dawn, tangled in sheets that cost more than my monthly rent, with Declan's arm heavy across my waist and his breath warm against my neck, I realized I'd fallen completely and irrevocably for the Irish mobster who'd kidnapped me, which was definitely going to complicate everything. Thanks for watching to the end of this story. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one.